Okay, so we're on an island containing two types of people, knights who always tell the truth and knaves who always lie. We're visiting the island and have the following encounters with natives. So we have two natives, A and B. A says both of us are knights, and B says A is a knave. So we're going to start by believing someone. We're going to say, okay, let's say we believe B. So we're going to say, suppose A is a knave. Okay, so we're just believing person B for a minute. We're going to say, okay, let's see, what would have to be true if you were telling the truth? Okay, so A is a knave. So we're supposing A is a knave. That means that what A said is a lie. Thus, both A and B are knaves, right? Because A said that they're both knights, but A is a knave, which means they're lying. So A and B are both knights. Okay, but this is a contradiction, right? Because A is a knave, A cannot also be a knight. So we have a contradiction. Because A cannot be both a knight and a knave. Okay, so we started with a supposition. We said, okay, let's just say that B is telling the truth and that A is a knave. That leads us to a contradiction. If A were a knave, then both A and B would have to be knights. But that's a contradiction. A is a knave, not a knight. So it must be that our supposition was incorrect. So it must be that A is a knight. Okay, A could not be a knave, or we have this contradiction. Okay, so we know A is a knight. Okay, so we know what A is. Okay, and if we know that A is a knight, then A always tells the truth, which means that B is also a knight, because A says that both of us are knights. Okay, since A says both are knights, and A will tell the truth, because A is a knight, then A and B are both knights. That's what A said at the beginning. Both of us are knights. We now know that we can believe that statement because we know A is a knight. Okay, so now we're approached by two other natives, C and D. Only C speaks. C says, both of us are knaves, and we're supposed to figure out what C and D are. So we only have one person who we could temporarily believe. Okay, so C is the only person who's spoken to us. We're going to say, okay, well, all right, let's see what has to be true if you're telling the truth. Okay, so we're going to suppose both C and D are knaves. Okay, we're going to believe you for a moment. So that means C is lying, right? If C is a knave, then they lied to us, in which case we have a contradiction, okay? If we suppose they're both knaves, that means that C is lying and they are not both knaves. In fact, it must be that C is a knave, though, okay? Because if C is telling the truth, it's impossible that C is telling the truth, right? Because if C were telling the truth, we get a contradiction. And if C is lying, that makes C a knave. So the only option is C must be a knave. And if C is a knave, that means that this statement is a lie. And the only way this statement could be a lie is if D is a knight. Okay, we have encountered two new natives, E and F. They both claim that the other is a knave. So E says F is a knave, F says E is a knave. So there's a couple of different options. I don't know who to believe. I'm going to assume they're both knaves, okay? So if we believe both of them, right? So we're just going to say, well, maybe you're both knaves. Suppose E and F are both knaves. That means they're both lying. Okay? And if they're both lying, that means that they're actually both knights. Right? Because the opposite of their statement, E says F is a knave, and if E is a knave, that means F is a knight. F says E is a knave, but if E is a knave, that means F is a knight. And if F is a knave, that means E is a knight. Okay? So we have a contradiction. They can't both be knaves. If they're both knaves, that means they're both lying and both are knights. Contradiction. Okay? So they can't both be knaves. Okay, what if they're both knights? Suppose E and F are both knights. Okay, that means they're both telling the truth. And they are both saying that the other is a knave, which means that they're both knaves. We have another contradiction. They can't be both knights and both be knaves. Okay, so we have another contradiction. This is not possible. They're not both knaves. They're not both knights. Okay, so that means that there has to be one of them is a knave and one is a knight. We can't tell which one, but luckily they didn't ask us. They said, how many knaves are there? So it's impossible that they're both knaves, impossible that they're both knights. So it must be one is a knave and one is a knight.